Welcome to the Explainer. Now, I want you to just picture it. The vast, sunlit ocean, stretching out literally as far as the eye can see. It feels completely boundless, right? Just totally wild. But actually, out there on the majestic high seas, there's a highly precise, structured code of law keeping the whole shebang in perfect harmony. Today, we're decoding the Indian Maritime Registry and Vessel Ownership Code to find out exactly how a seagoing vessel actually earns its legal identity.
Okay, let's dive into this. So, what really makes a vessel belong to a nation? We often just think of ships flying a flag, but there is a deeply structured legal blueprint that governs exactly which vessels get to call India their home port. It isn't just about slapping a name on a hull, not at all. This code dictates who protects the ship, what laws govern the crew, and how it navigates the globe. The rules we're unpacking today apply specifically to seagoing vessels, and they form the absolute bedrock of their maritime identity. Section 1. Defining an Indian vessel, the faces behind the fleet. So according to the code, the keys to these magnificent ships are held by a very specific cast of characters. Look, no vessel is considered an Indian vessel unless it's owned by eligible entities. This means Indian citizens, for sure, but it also brilliantly embraces the global diaspora by explicitly including non-resident Indians and overseas citizens of India. It also covers companies or bodies established under central or state acts that have a registered base right there in India. And then there's this flexible category for any other person or body the central government might specify. But wait, it's definitely not a free-for-all. The government actually notifies the exact proportion of ownership these entities have to hold. It's like a giant, beautifully organized puzzle. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is this fascinating plot twist in the legal code. We call it the OCI exception. So we just established that overseas citizens of India, or OCIs, are totally eligible to own an Indian vessel. But if a vessel is wholly, and we mean literally 100% owned by an OCI, well, it's actually not required to be registered as an Indian vessel at all. It grants these specific owners a really unique freedom from the strict registration mandates that apply to basically everyone else in the registry. Pretty cool, right? Moving right along, Section 2, the registration mandate, mapping the ports of registry. The law doesn't just say you have to register, it dictates exactly where you do it. Once the central government declares a specific location as a port of registry, every single Indian vessel must be officially registered there. Just imagine these vibrant, sun-drenched ports scattered along the coastline. They aren't just logistical hubs for cargo and busy sailors, they're essentially the official birthplaces of a ship's legal identity. If you're operating an Indian vessel, you absolutely must be on the books at one of these designated locations. No exceptions. But hold on, what about the historic ships, the ones that have been sailing for decades under older rules? Well, the law ensures a totally seamless transition. Any vessel that was already registered at an Indian port under some older repealed law is simply deemed to have been registered under this new act. It's automatically recognized as an Indian vessel. I love this part. It's this perfect grandfather clause that honors their past while smoothly bringing them bright and early right into the modern legal framework without skipping a beat. All right, on to Section 3, exemptions and special rules, the cinematic contrasts of the fleet. And this brilliantly illustrates a really sharp dramatic contrast when it comes to the government's own fleet. So standard government vessels, they've got to play by the rules and register under the act just like the rest. But high-stakes maritime security operates on a totally different frequency. The Indian Navy, the Coast Guard, customs authorities, central armed police forces, and the police, they're entirely exempt from these standard registration rules. This gives defense and enforcement vessels the agility they desperately need, drawing a super clear line between standard civilian government work and active maritime security. And here is where the scope of the registry goes truly global. Despite everything we just talked about regarding mandatory registration at those Indian ports, the law totally acknowledges the vast international nature of modern shipping. Check this out. Subject to some very specific government conditions, an Indian vessel can actually be registered in an entirely different country. It really proves that the Indian Maritime Registry isn't just rigid, it's highly adaptable and seamlessly integrated with the sprawling, boundaryless reality of the whole maritime industry. Okay, final act. Section 4. Detentions and abandoned ships, anchors drop, and second chances. So what happens if a ship tries to just sail off without playing by the rules? Well, it faces an immediate hard stop. If any Indian vessel attempts to proceed to sea without a valid certificate of registration, it shall be detained by the proper officer until that certificate is produced. It's a real dramatic freeze frame in our maritime journey. I mean, you simply cannot embark onto the open ocean without your papers in perfect order. The rule of law holds that anchor tight. Now, this strict enforcement leads to an incredible story of maritime redemption. Just imagine a non-Indian vessel abandoned in Indian waters, just left to rust and fade in the salt and sun. Well, the law actually allows for a rebirth. If this forgotten ship is acquired by an eligible Indian entity, it can follow the prescribed procedures to get legally registered under this act. It gets a brand new identity, a real second chance, and a fresh opportunity to sail those sunlit oceans as a proud part of the recognized fleet. It's like a movie script. So, this all brings us to one final provocative thought. As these magnificent ships cross international waters, way out there far from any coastline, how does a nation's registry ultimately define the identity, the rules, and the destiny of the vessels that sail under its colors? You see, a registry is so much more than just a list of names. It's a vital, living legal code that essentially tethers a floating city of steel back to the very soil of its homeland. Thank you so much for joining me on this voyage through the Indian Maritime Registry, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.